You've probably seen 1,000 courtroom dramas on TV, right? Well, forget all that for a second. The real system of criminal law, the one that shapes every single case you read about in the news, is built on a few core principles. And we're about to break down those foundations, starting with the most basic question of all. So, first things first, let's draw a really clear line in the sand. Criminal law is not about two people arguing over a broken contract. That's civil law. Criminal law is a whole different beast. This is when the government itself, the state, steps in to prosecute someone for an act that harms society as a whole. Think of it this way. Civil law is a personal dispute, but criminal law, that's a public wrong. Okay, so why does the government even get involved? I mean, what's the ultimate goal here? It turns out the entire system is actually trying to achieve four very distinct things, all at the same time. And these four purposes are in a constant balancing act. First, you've got deterrence, which is pretty straightforward. It's about discouraging people from committing crimes in the first place. Then there's retribution, the idea of a just punishment, an eye for an eye sort of thing. Next is rehabilitation, which is focused on helping offenders change their ways. And finally, protection, which is all about keeping society safe by removing dangerous people from it. Every single law and every sentence tries to strike a balance between these four often competing goals. That leads us to the next big question, right? If those are the goals, who actually writes the rulebook? It's not like there's one single source. It's actually a pretty complex legal framework.
Yeah, our laws definitely don't come from just one place. Instead, it's more like a complex tapestry woven together from four different kinds of legal authority.
I like to think of it as a pyramid. At the very, very top, you have the supreme law of the land, constitutional law. Nothing can violate it. Right below that, you've got statutory laws. These are the rules written and passed by our elected officials in Congress or state legislatures. Then comes case law, which is super interesting. It's built from the decisions judges have made in previous trials. And at the base, you have administrative law, all those detailed rules and regulations from government agencies. Each layer has to follow the rules of the one above it.
So we have the why behind the law and the where it comes from. But where does it all actually get put into practice? Well, that happens inside the court system. In the US, you've basically got two court systems running side by side. You have the federal courts, which deal with big deal stuff like crimes that break national laws or cross state lines. But, and this is key, the vast, vast majority of cases you hear about, everything from theft to assault, are handled in state courts, which operate based on their own state and local laws. Now, a case follows a pretty specific path. It always starts in a trial court. This is what's called the court of original jurisdiction. It's where they hear testimony, look at evidence, and figure out the facts. But what if one side thinks the judge made a legal mistake? Well, then they can appeal to a higher appellate court. But here's the crucial difference. Appellate courts don't hear new evidence or retry the case. They just review the original trial to see if the law was applied correctly.
And this brings us to the moment everyone's been waiting for, the climax of any trial. After all the lawyers have argued and all the evidence has been presented, it all boils down to one final decision. So how is that verdict actually reached?
It all comes down to three incredibly powerful words: beyond a reasonable doubt. Honestly, this is the entire ballgame. It's the highest standard of proof we have in our legal system. It means the prosecution has this huge burden to convince the jury that there is no other logical explanation for what happened. It's not about being 100% certain, but man, it is incredibly close. So, at the end of the day, there are really only three ways this can end. A guilty verdict means the jury believes the prosecution met that incredibly high burden of proof. A not guilty verdict is really important to understand. It doesn't necessarily mean the person is innocent. It just means the prosecution failed to prove its case. Or you can have a hung jury, which is when the jurors simply can't all agree, and that usually leads to a mistrial. So there you have it, the basic building blocks of criminal law. Now, I want you to think about this. The next time you see a headline about a big court case, look a little deeper. Ask yourself, which of those four purposes is the law trying to serve here? Did the prosecution really meet its burden of proof? Because knowing the why and the how doesn't just give you facts, it gives you a whole new lens to see the entire justice system.